My name is Andrejs. I'm not only a test automation engineer, I'm also a quality assurance architect in Evolution, where we build games like this, like you see behind me. Kind of a bit different type of games, still count as games. I'm helping different teams to plan tests correctly, to pick the right tools for testing and frameworks to build the strategy for each test project. There are different ones in the company to fit the global testing strategy for the company overall. Before that, I was working in a team that developed and released some of live game shows. We got a few industry awards for them. Was really fun, although I guess it's a lot of different from the type of games that usually you play. Even before this, I was a test engineer for a project in reinsurance field. So I have a broad experience in testing area, which I'm excited to share with you today. Mostly, I must say, with web applications, just a tiny bit of Unreal testing. What I wanted to say, you know, I'm somewhat of a Digital Dragons Academy student myself today, because unfortunately, or luckily, I didn't study IT in university. I'm a transport engineer by degree, so I'm familiar with such type of boot camps and lectures, as this is exactly how I became a test engineer myself a long time ago. So I still like to learn. I learn every day. It's the industry when you cannot stop learning because it changes very fast. So today I'm still learning how to be a good presenter. So I'm counting on your feedback. Would really appreciate that. I did my best to avoid some complex technical words in the presentation, but I have missed a few as well. So I will be happy to clarify those during Q&A session. And without further ado, let's jump into today's topic. The agenda. While I was performing dry runs for these presentations, I realized I have maybe drifted away from the topic of the ethics as such towards the topic of communication within the team. Nevertheless, I will be talking about generic testing a lot, and you will hear about the problems that may arise in the project when different groups of the same team needs to communicate. I will give you some thoughts about how a test engineer should focus on what needs to be done and how he may explain the reasoning behind his actions and point of view to other colleagues. Also, I will outline some key qualities of a test engineer. There are a lot of them, but there are also a few of them that matches the topic of what I would like to share, to express. So I will be talking about them and why I consider them important. And of course, I will share some personal experience, some problems, how did I manage to solve them or did not. Please excuse the crudity of the module. I didn't have time to build it to scale or paint it. I believe that searching for defects and being able to manage your work according to the project life is only one part of the job. Like an iceberg has only the visible one. Another one is not usually considered as important part, maybe especially from other team members, but it can bring the most difficulties and even harm, just like it was in the case for this story, you know, right? This important part is working with the people. You can be very good in searching for defects, writing scenarios or automated tests, but with improper management, maybe, or hostile attitude from other team members, being satisfied with your own job could become a difficult exercise. I mean, you obviously have to be satisfied with what you do. Before continuing, maybe I would like to point out just briefly, as I will be speaking about different groups in the team. Usually there is a project manager who is managing the project, the business analysts who work with clients on identifying their needs and create specification for new features. It's kind of a business part of the team. And there is also the engineering part of the team, the backend developers who work on algorithms, logic, databases, the stuff that users usually don't see. The front-end developers who work on the user interface, the stuff that users actually do see, and test engineers. Comparing to restaurant, we may say the backend is the kitchen where the dishes are being made, and we usually don't see this part when we are in the restaurant. The front end is the table with knives and forks and spoons and plates and glasses, providing us an interface to consume the food. And API is a communication protocol between kitchen and the table. In this universe, the tester would be the ego from Ratatouille, which check all the sides of a restaurant from all points of view. Let's see what's the problem about collaborating with other team members. People do like to form different communities, be that a book club or a car club or football team fans club. People really do like to count themselves into being a part of somewhat bigger. For the projects in IT, first of all, it's very easy to break project team into even smaller communities by the type of the job everybody is doing. Let's say we're creating the project, we need to develop some application, test it, and release it. It's a big application. So we have strong, friendly, mature team of professionals that consists of a business analyst, 5 front-end developers, 5 back-end developers, and 5 testers. And we're the PO. So there will be plenty of features, some bigger, some smaller, some related to backend, some to front-end. So we will have to shuffle teams from sprint to sprint into even smaller teams with representatives from each group. And there will be different count of those representatives. Sometimes there will be more people that are more front-end developers in the group. Sometimes more backend developers, sometimes one tiny change that could be done by one developer needs to be done by many testers because the changes are very big. So just a minute has passed and we already divided our strong and friendly team into a few sub-teams basing on their abilities. And they will need to communicate not only within the group, but with other groups as well. There's nothing wrong about it. It's just how the project works. We have different groups of people, and this can lead to efficient or inefficient collaboration between those groups. But the ability the necessity of have to do different job from different people is a key to success of a project, because one person cannot do everything. It is important to ensure that these sub-teams do not work in silos separately, and that there is an effective communication between them. Let's dive a bit deeper into how do these groups communicate, share information, and see the project. Typically, the front-end and back-end teams in software development are distinguished not only by their respective areas of focus, but also by their use of different programming languages and tools. Although there are universal protocols for communication between two sides of an app, the teams tend to work independently due to these differences. Sharing information about how they work is generally not necessary, because unless there is a common issue that affects both teams. There is even a bigger gap. Now, I was talking about backend and front-end developers, and there is even a bigger gap between all sorts of developers and testers, because even when testers do code, they have different skill set and responsibilities. Things that developers care about are way beyond what tester usually is care about. Let's say a developer is working on implementing a new search functionality for a web application. The developer will have to think about various technical aspects, like how the search algorithm should work, what database technology should be used for indexing and querying data, how to optimize the search performance, how to handle errors and edge cases like empty search queries or non-existent search results. On the other hand, a tester may be focused on ensuring that search functionality works as expected from the user's perspective. This might include test scenarios like entering different types of search queries and verifying the search results, checking that the search results are displayed in a user-friendly way, verifying that error messages are displayed when appropriate, such as when there are no search results, and making sure that search functionality is accessible and works well on different devices and browsers. While it is important for a tester, for a good tester, to understand some technical aspects of how the search functionality works, their focus is more on ensuring that it meets the user's needs and expectations, rather than the nitty-gritty technical details that developers have to consider. So when the good tester is aware of implementation details that will help him to design better test scenarios and even maybe spot some potential issues even without seeing like the feature of the application itself, by just seeing the code or specification. This craftsmanship may take years to develop. I wish you to get there successfully eventually from either one side or another. But believe me, in vast majority of cases, things that developers discuss and do are not as useful for testers to do their job. I mean, the technical details. Having a different view on the same things, people also tend to look at each other differently. There are plenty of jokes and memes around web about how do IT people see each other. I guess the most popular one when it comes to testing is that the testers break everything. There are some stereotypes about each role. Designers, of course, see themselves as an icon of the design. The project managers are not less than presidents. And QA are the people, quality assurance team, are the people who is guarding the earth from some hell of creatures that are trying to break applications. Hard to blame someone for it. It's because having different views, doing different job is how we achieve a success in a project, as I've said already. Writing code in a way is not more difficult than testing or project manager, it's just different. But this leads to a thought that just as people see others differently, they also see and treat the results of others' work differently. In the end, we're all the creators. We like to say we're superstars of testing, of engineering. Both code and tests are our creatures, even when they are ugly, doesn't work correctly. We spend some time, nerves. We love the results of our job no matter what. Otherwise, it's hard to receive satisfaction for what you're doing. Now, let's imagine a developer who received 10 defects for just written feature. Somebody may say that he's not a good parent for allowing this to happen to his creation. And this might be true, but the feature is still a kind of child. It might hurt to receive a barrel of criticism. Who would be one to blame for it? The one who brought the bad news, the one who broke the feature, the tester. But testers must be good in spotting things that work incorrectly or doesn't work at all. As a result of the tester's job, they're often seen as somebody who likes to break everything. Even if the feature the dev created was not perfect, I assume it was working somehow, but then came the tester and broke everything. That's how the developers see the situation. If it evolves this way, it's easy to fall for believing that someone's work is more important than the others and devalue the work of others. For instance, if developers saying, I'm creating the feature, and then somebody comes, it only breaks, the tester can say, on the contrary, it's me who is guarding the rightness of an application, the quality, but developers do not care about the quality. They don't care about checking how things work. Now we have a conflict. The testers say developers are not writing good code. The developers claim testers only break everything. Most of the time, people do remember that they're working in the same team. But unfortunately, you cannot fully avoid this attitude. I've been working in lots of projects, and yeah, it really depends every time. Let's try to search for a kind of solution. For this, I would like to remind first what is the objective of testing first. There are many objectives of the testing. The best source to find them is probably the ISTQB certification. Bartek also mentioned it. It's like a thing, yeah, you can just learn, pass the exam, get the certification, and kind of forget half of what has been learned. But it's also a nice structured like document which tells a lot about what are the different aspects of the testing. According to this certification, the test objectives include making sure the requirements are fulfilled, finding and preventing defects, building confidence in the level of quality, things like this. I believe that these activities have kind of a shared responsibility, because when we speak about preventing defects, where does the defects come from? From the developer, from the code, maybe from the specification, but the code is later being written on the specification. So the tester just could not be responsible for preventing defects on its own. He needs to communicate with business analysts, with developer, maybe some processes needs to be adjusted. The same goes for the confidence in the level of quality. I think it's more like a project level activity. The whole team should be involved and contribute into building confidence. However, testers have a unique responsibility to provide accurate and relevant information to stakeholders who can then make informed decisions about the release of the product and on the product itself. And this is something that is more in the hand of exactly the test engineers. I have such a wonderful book right here. It's called Lessons Learned in Software Testing. It's my basically table book, very good one. Although it was written almost 20 years ago, it's still good. It describes a lot of things around the testing, both in management side, automation side, like test design side. If you are interested to learn more about the testing, those like a list of I would say a list of advices in essence that provide a very concise and informative informative description of different aspects of testing. Sam Kanner, James Buck, and Brett Petticourt, the authors of yes, that was the title. The authors of this book, they begin the first chapter of this book is describing exactly the role of the testing engineers. they claim that test engineer is the headlights of a project. So a project is like a road trip. Some projects are simple and routine, like driving to the store in the daylight. But most projects worth doing are more like driving a truck off-road in the mountains at night. Those projects need headlights. And as the tester, you light the way. You eliminate the road ahead, so the programmers and managers, however they bicker over the map, can at least see where they are, what are they about to run over, and how close they are to the cliff. The detailed mission of the testing group varies from company to company, and behind those details, though, is a common factor. Testing is done to find information. Critical decisions about the project or the product are made on the basis of that information. I like this thought very much. So it really resonates with me and how I attribute to software testing engineering. It's all about finding information with very different tools. There is often a question from the project manager: are there any bugs? Are we good to go? One thing I can say for sure, there definitely are bugs somewhere. You cannot fully avoid them, so because you cannot test everything. So eventually they will be somewhere. No matter if we tested for an hour or week or two and didn't find any defects, it actually doesn't mean that there are no defects. It means that given the time and resources we had, we were not able to find any bugs. Then it's up to the stakeholder to decide whether to use this information or not. We can name the scenarios or use cases that were tested, or name the main features that are working. So stakeholders have an access to, this is the picture to illustrate the headlights. Sorry. We can name the features that we have checked for this particular test run. Then we are able to pass this information to the stakeholders so they can make a right decision. In order to retrieve this information, sometimes it needs to be played rough, to break something, to find out what exactly is not working. It could be some tricky cases. To keep in mind this, note that we're providing information. It's our job. It's our task to do this. It's kind of sounds very basic and obvious. So why should it be repeated? But in real life, it happens that it must be repeated all the time. Although we're building the same product and we shouldn't blame each other for each other's work. People are people. They tend to forget things, be emotional, be irrational sometimes. So it's a good thing to keep everyone reminded of this principle time to time. We could be different, but we're building the same thing, the one thing. In the web, there are numerous examples of so-called the code of tester. I will highlight some ideas that should help you to keep you on a professional track and maybe to prove your point to the colleagues. These are the things. So these are the things that you should keep in mind when it needs to be reminded to yourself or colleagues in times of trouble. By the way, those points are complementary to each other. This is valid actually also for many other things in IT world, and even sometimes they overlap with each other. So although I tried to break those points into separate items, I would say they must be better considered as a whole. So the tester, wow, there's a glitch in the presentation. The tester should be attentive. It's a part of our jobs to see what other people don't. the intention of trying to find some very unusual cases, however, can be not as effective as expected. There is a nice joke showing how working through very different scenarios can still lead to unexpected result. So a new bar is being developed, and a test engineer walks into a bar, crawls into a bar, jumps into a bar, drives into a bar, sneaks into a bar while dancing, and then orders 0 mugs of beer, 9999999 mugs of beer, -1 mug of beer, QWERTY mugs of beer, and everything is fine, and the bar is getting released. Then a customer walks in, asks where the bathroom is, the bar crashes and burns into the ashes. So testers should not try to find kind of faults in the work of developers, but rather to work on identifying areas where improvements can be made to enhance the overall quality of the software. Testers should think as a user, a specifically very unusual user. Like sometimes there are things when developer might say, like, come on, what are those scenarios? Who on earth would do that? The Murphy law, however, says if something can go wrong, it will definitely go wrong. Users will most likely use our product incorrectly sometimes. So in general, when tester has found a place that doesn't work, it doesn't mean that the tester wanted to break something. It means the tester was lucky enough to find the angle of view when an error became visible, and how the developer can and now the developer can fix the error, and the company will receive less complaints about the product. Being attentive is specifically required from tester in a bit different way. As we already know, developers can and should also strive to think as a user, but their perspective can be different from a tester's perspective. Developers are focused on building and implementing the functionality according to the requirements and technical specifications, so they may not always have the same level of attention to detail and user experience as a tester, who is specifically focused on finding issues and ensuring the application meets the user's needs and expectations. So when developer is coming to you with and saying that you have brought something, you can say that you need to be attentive. You're trying to look on this feature from the point of user, and they might use the feature incorrectly. So it's fine. It's actually a good thing that something wrong has been discovered. Another thing, the tester should be impersonal, because does it matter who made a mistake so that there is a defect in the code? Should we blame a developer, or should we blame the business analyst who created a specification? Well, it's not, or should we blame maybe ourselves who didn't check the specification before developers started to implementing this? It's not a straightforward yes or no question, because if there is a flaw in the process, like no proper analysis has been made, of course, it must be addressed in order to avoid same issue in the future. But apart from this, I believe it doesn't matter who was writing the code with the defect, as you cannot read of defects completely, because you cannot test everything. It could be anybody from the dev team. The most important thing is that if there is a defect, all the focus should be put on how to fix it. Testers should be a good team player, because there is no glory or joy in finger pointing. The negative attitude to colleagues, trash talk, accusations can backfire very quickly. Being a tester proves the old saying, every day people are making mistakes and nobody can be insured from them. basically mistakes are our bread and butter. So it's good that there are mistakes. We need just to gracefully deal with them. Formula One drivers like to say we win as a team and we lose as a team, and this applies totally to any IT project. Usually the drivers say it when they lose a race, but of course not all the projects in IT are successful either. The customers that will use the product would not care about who made a mistake and introduced a defect. They will complain to product as a whole. In such a way, it is important to sustain a mindset that helps to create a collaborative and solution-oriented work environment where the focus is on improving the quality of the software rather than finding faults in people. And this is kind of maybe a bit hard to explain. The tester should be more than a tester. Because testing is not just about finding bugs, it's also about making sure that the software is usable, efficient, it meets the needs of the users. Therefore, the testers need to have a broad understanding of the software development process, including requirements gathering, design, coding, maintenance, as well as the domain knowledge of the application being tested. Like when I was working in a project related to reinsurance, I obviously had to learn a lot about reinsurance in order to better understand what is the tool I am building, what's the purpose of the project I'm working on. And additionally, testers should have good communication and collaboration skills, as they often work with developers, project managers, and other stakeholders. By being more than just a tester, more than just searching for bugs, tester can provide valuable feedback and insights that can help to improve the overall quality of the software and enhance the user experience. So now I would like to share some examples of such communication issues that I experienced myself, and how did we managed in a team to fix them. The code separation. In one of the projects I was working, the developers team forced the test engineers team to have a separate repository, a place where the code is stored, for the test team to have a separate one, because they were afraid that testers are low qualified and they will break something in the developer's code. So like the classic issue, the developers will, the testers will break something. The thing is, if the code is stored in one place, the tests could be executed faster and more frequently, thus providing the faster feedback. Because of the test code being separated from the dev code, the test team had to work with these tests with quite a significant delay, because first of all, the developers should end their work, then the application needs to be built and deployed somewhere. Only then the test could be executed. And by the time we receive a feedback from the test that something is not working, developer has already switched to another task, and now he needs to switch the context back in order to fix something, some defect. We also used to have some sessions when we need to design something for the automated tests together. For instance, when there were a lot of buttons and input fields on the screen, we introduced like unique identifiers for each item, so that later those identifiers could be used in automated tests. And at some point, I realized that we're basically following the same approaches and procedures to the code as the developers. So we had the sessions to, we were working on a small chunks of the code as developers usually do. We were constantly checking each other's work following like same procedures. More to say, we even looked at how developers do those code reviews, and we try to use the same things, because if they do, then it must be something good. So next time when something was needed to be done from the developer side, I convinced them that I can save their time and do the thing myself, because they will still have an option to review my work and to reject it if something is wrong. Like no danger about trying to provide some code that's been done by me to the developers. We tried, and they actually liked it. Who would not? I guess when somebody's doing something instead of you, you would appreciate that. Soon, other team members also followed the same approach. Like, yeah, we got a better collaboration with dev team since then. Unfortunately, although the project was too big by the moment, so we could not merge the test code back into a common place again. So we kind of stay separated, but things improved when working with automated scenarios. Pro tip from me about this story: instead of asking a developer or any other colleague to check or to do something, better ask them to teach you how to do it. Say you want to do this independently in order not to bother them again. Sometimes people really appreciate these kind of questions and attitude, and more likely will share info with you rather than do something themselves. Also, while describing something to you, they will eventually provide you more information to better explain you what exactly needs to be done. Usually, there is nothing hard about some simple developer tasks that usually testers need some support with. Just a bit of knowledge and practice necessary, as I guess for a lot of things in life. Another story to report or to repair is I had a project that was made in a very rush without proper specification. Sorry. Project without proper specification, and the worst thing is almost nobody could make some proper decisions about what needs to be done. It's a common situation, by the way. In some projects, when there are no hard, very experienced project manager, there could be times when nobody can make a decision. I was young. It was my first solo project. I was the only one QA in the team. So I was responsible for documentation, for manual testing, for automated testing, for all the test plans and everything related to the testing. And I was kind of very afraid that the failure with this project will have a negative impact on me. So I was raising red flags to the management. I was pushing developers. I was doing all the bad things, like half of them that has been already described in this presentation. We were arguing a lot. And when the part of the application was released, finally, I found out that nothing is worked. And I've raised around 40 defects in one evening, like in 3 hours. Was I good at testing in this case? Well, it was indeed one of the most productive evenings of mine, if counted by defects amount, but unfortunately, it did not improve the project at all. Still, nothing was working. Only later, I had a chance to see how this could be fixed. So one of the options, once on a conference, I had a workshop where we worked with an application that has a lot of defects. In the first half of the day, we only submitted reports about defects. There were easy defects, some of it tricky ones. And in the second half of the day, we tried to fix some of the easy errors, how tester can fix the developer's code. After the second session, even though we were working with easy kind of bugs, there still were some bugs, but the quality of the project improved a lot. So if I knew it with that project, even if I would not try to fix things myself, I do not try this as well even now when I'm more experienced than then, I would definitely speak with developer about some kind of pair testing sessions so that we can check things together and fix them right away, thus bringing more value to the product than just having 40 bug reports in bug tracking system. Another solution to a similar communication issue could be the more thorough work with acceptance criteria. Basically, the acceptance criteria is a list of scenarios that we agree with everybody that should work, usually with business analysts and with developer. And the sooner such acceptance criteria is verified with all the parties, less misunderstandings there will be later. So for instance, for a story like, as a user, I want to be able to reset my password, the acceptance criteria, so the things that definitely should work. The user must be able to access the reset password feature. The user must receive an email with a link to reset. This link should work. It must redirect user to an appropriate place. And after the password has been updated, the user should be able to successfully log in. The working out such scenarios is quite an important thing. These sessions might be long sometimes, and of course, not all the use cases could be spotted from the first view. There are still a lot of things that comes to mind only when the implementation started, and you actually try to do something. But the weeks of work can save you hours of planning. There is such a saying, so it's still better to plan things ahead. For this case, another pro tip from me, another small story. So there was a case when developer didn't want to review the acceptance criteria, because he didn't think that it's something important, and I could not convince him no matter how I tried. Nobody could, neither, not even project manager. So I found another developer in another team who actually liked this idea, and we agreed, and he brought this idea into the dev community and shared on one of the weekly knowledge sharing talks. Then, as I knew that the developers have discussed this and the majority liked this idea, then I could negotiate with a developer from my team to try the new approach. So sometimes the developers won't listen to you, but they will listen to one of their kind. And this is something that you can use for your good. For this summary, to sum up, what have we discussed today, and the main takeaways from my today's speech? Testing is about providing information. So testers need to consider both positive and negative aspects of an application, and negative aspects are very crucial because it could lead to some how to say, because every defect would be not appreciated by the users that use the application. The testers and developers have different perspectives on the work they do, so this can sometimes lead to a finger point. The success of the project depends on the entire team, and everyone's role is essential. So we're not break things to break. We're also I act as a headlight that help to discover what hasn't been, what could go wrong for the users of our application. If you need to, if you need some help from developers or any other team member, you can ask not only for help, but for knowledge in order to learn how to do it yourself. Some people are more welcome to share it than to do something. And informal communication can be more effective than formal communication in certain situations. So adaptability and communication are really critical for the team success. So I guess that's it. Thank you. Bardzo dziękuję for your attention. I would be happy to answer your questions about this topic or maybe something about the games I'm working with, like that's done for the gambling industry.
Thank you very much, Andrejs. We have got one question right now from Jakub. How far should testers investigate the source of the bug? By this, I mean, is it all right to describe source more from the front-end perspective, user POV, than from back-end perspective and describing the true source?
Mm-hmm. I think I really like Bartek was making this poll and how he described it. It depends. This thought applies to like really a lot of the things. So it really depends on the context and how does the team approach the work on a product. For some people, you can say that there is like the root cause is something purely technical. So we need to improve our technical side, like just to maintain the scalability of the project or some important integrations. For some people, it could be an argument that, come on, our users will see the things incorrectly. So we need to make sure that this feature exactly is working for users as it should. I would say that a lot of things are how the project works are subject of test team or not on test team of a team agreement. So two projects in the same company can work differently. The important thing is how the team defines the process for themselves. And an important thing is for whole team to be on the same page, to have these agreements clear and to approach this kind of investigations together in the same way from dev and from test side. I hope this helps.
Thank you. And do you have any other questions for Andrejs? We got like 11 minutes to ask. Okay, Andrejs, could you look at the chat because something is happening there?
Yes.
I guess. And we have got another question from Shimon. I am an intern for 2 months now. I have never encountered negative attitude from devs. How often does that happen?
2 months is a too short term to, I guess, make such conclusions. I worked in more than 11 projects. It's again, it depends. I was lucky enough. I didn't have it in my projects quite often, but now as I'm working as an architect, I need to dig into how different projects work. Sometimes there are like very, I would say, awkward cases. We had a case when the test engineer was trying to ask the developer about some aspects of the implementation. And developer was so sure that testers should not do such a things that he kicked off the test engineer from the company channels, like communication channel, from the Slack channel. So you never know what is the project you will be working about. I guess it's not a big problem right now. So, and also, I'm working a lot on communicating with POs, product owners, with developers, with explaining the reasoning behind why we do need such information, some information from them. But people are different, so you cannot be insured from this. I hope everything will be fine in your career. Just like if you see such a hostile attitude, make sure to remind that it's like it's not because you are trying to find some flaws. It's because you have to. It's like your job.
And there's a question from Alexander.
Yes.
How to deal with inappropriate developers?
So how to deal with inappropriate developers? I guess the only reasonable thing is to escalate this. If there are some troubles, like really troubles with communication, you can escalate these cases to the manager of the project or to HR. Probably you should start with the project manager. I had, I didn't have difficulties, but in my experience, I had some developers that were strict, very strict about how they approach the work. So I used not only developers, I had a business analyst who was very strict, like to each comma that I put into testing documents. We spent quite a few meetings trying to find out who to blame for our poor communication. Eventually, it ended with like defining the rules. So we created a list of rules that how I should approach the document, and how this business analyst should review the document. So when the game rules were clear for everyone, we actually started to collaborate in a very good manner. And later I learned that this business analyst claims me as one of the best test engineers he was working about. So I guess there is no universal scenario. If it is something personal, then unfortunately it's something to escalate to manager or HR. If it's some project related, and you can sit and agree of okay how we can do our life easier, so we can collaborate. Actually, you can define these rules of communication. This could be also an option.
And another question from Arkadiusz. I am test automation engineer in standard business, mobile web apps, and I thought game testing is purely manual. Can you share some specifics about your work, approach, tools? Do game engines support automation somehow?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Test automation engineer in standard business. Speaking of games, I've mentioned that we're building a bit of different games. We build games that are mostly web applications. So we have all the tooling, all the capabilities of standard like web application. So we can use any framework that are on the market, like WebDriver IO, Cypress, Playwright. We can use WebDriver to interact with elements in our games. Basically, we try to create tests for both the backend part. For the front-end part, we try to keep a limited amount of the end-to-end tests to make sure just that the main functionality is working. For this, we use TypeScript and WebDriver IO framework, and in current project, we store our code together with developers. So they are frequently running our tests. They get the feedback faster. Yep, that's basically our stack. This stack allows us to execute tests for both desktop browsers and mobile browsers. Because the framework WebDriver IO allows the cross-browser and cross-device execution. Basically, our games are just web applications.
And last question, I guess, it's on the chat. From Michał, you mentioned communication between departments. Which books could you recommend about it, or tips when there is a heat between devs and QA about how to cool down the atmosphere?
Okay. The books about communication between departments. First of all, I would really, if we speak about testing, I would really recommend to read more books about the testing itself, because when you're well aware of the work you are doing and the reasoning behind why you do the things exactly in a certain way, you can easily how to say, describe the reasoning also to the others. So when the developer or project manager would ask, why do we need to do this or that, you will be able to support your point of view with some thought from a book about how the testing is done and why it is important for the testing overall. So my general recommendation would be to read books about the testing. One of them I mentioned today, it's Lessons Learned in Software Testing. It provides a lot of information in small chunks. So like it's my table book. I don't have by my hand all the books I would like to recommend, but I think I can post it in chat in a few minutes after my presentation, the things that I find useful for manual and for automation test engineers. So, and about how to cool down the heat between developers and QAs, I guess there should be a facilitator on every meeting. So there should be, ideally, there should be a person that will spot that there is a heat and it should be tangled down. Like I said, the goal of working in the project is to build the same thing. We're all building the same product. So if the heat is coming up, I guess I would try to remind everybody that we are in the same team, actually. And if anybody have concerns about not being properly heard or properly understood, let's take a step down to find out what are the issues, and then we will we will identify if they are crucial for the project and how can we avoid those issues. So yeah, being personal, not try to accuse someone of doing something wrong. I mean, it happens. Remind to focus on what we would like to achieve. Yeah, I guess something like this.